Hey everyone, back with part 10 of the Coles steam engine build. This is dealing with the counterweights, the machining of the counterweights. First step was to do some sanding on the back side of these counterweights, or I guess it's the front side, getting a nice even surface to work with. And then mounted it in my 3-jaw chuck on the lathe rather gently. This would be an easy part to break. And so adjusting the speed for a little slower speed and taking real light cuts on this. And it turned out pretty good. A lot of this video is also sped up just for time's sake. A lot of this is an interrupted cut, so got to make sure that the tool is sharp for this. Once I got past the interrupted cut, I just wanted to make sure everything was still going good and the part was holding true, and so far so good. The high-speed steel tools give a nice surface finish, a little better than the carbide insert tooling. Got it flipped over now, and this is the back side with the raised portion on the counterweight. So the raised portion is all that's machined on the lathe at this point on this side of these counterweights. Since I'm just doing the outside surface and the inside surface, These don't have to run center in the chuck, and so there's no need to use the 4-jaw here. Raised portion looks pretty good. Checking thickness just to make sure I'm at spec on that. A couple of steels here just to show the surface finish. The next step was to get it in the mill on a setup fixture plate, and I'm using the boring head to do this next step, to machine the surface on the surface that's set in from those raised that raised portion on these counterweights. I went ahead and set the radius or the circumference that I wanted cut using the part itself, just doing some sweeps back and forth on the part to make sure I had the radius or the circumference sweep that I wanted, and also the depth. And then I set the DRO zeros for that, and then started taking light passes on the counterweights to finish the surface faces off on these two parts. Again, this whole process is an interrupted cut, and so make sure you use sharp tooling when you do this, and it'll come out good. I'm shooting through the guards here. I've adjusted the camera angle on future videos, so it'll be a little easier to see, but a lot of it does show up here. Again, a lot of this video is sped up for time purposes. Checking depth to make sure the thickness of the thinner portion of these counterweights are right where they need to be. Just using a depth micrometer for this worked pretty good. The next machining process on these is to clean up the end and machine the slot where the crank web goes. The important numbers are the width and the depth of that slot, and so that's what I'm shooting for. Okay. Once I have the depth done, I can flip the part over and drill the hole, the center hole, for mounting these counterweights to the crankshaft. I machined these to a snug fit because I am going to be using them to help locate the hole on the crankshaft for these mounting bolts once I get the center hole drilled. I didn't get any video of drilling this center hole, just a few photos. Here's the countersink for that bolt. Again, I used those counterweights to mark the location on the crankshaft, then center punched them and drilled and tapped them for 632 bolts to hold them on. There's two more bolts that run through these crank webs, as you'll see. Here's the preparation for drilling those other bolts that go down through the crank webs. These go completely through the crank webs, and they're just a through hole. They don't need tapped. Then it's back on the lathe to go ahead and finish the outer circumference or diameter of these counterweights. The final machining, you can see that the Crankshaft is running just a little out of true, just because I loaded it up in the call-up chuck and didn't really do much with it. Taking light passes just to make sure nothing goes wrong. I do use the tailstock center on the final passes to make sure these parts are identical and running true. Everything's looking good so far. These counterweights turned out really well, really good. I did put some chamfers on these that aren't in the video, but they are in the pictures here. The last work to be done on these counterweights was just to clean up these areas, these angled areas on the counterweights. Next video should be of these bearings, these main bearings for the crankshaft. Anyways, thanks for watching.